Welcome to We Are Women, Unapologetically, the podcast that talks about the good, bad, ugly, and awesome. Careers, life transitions, confidence, and everything in between. Because shift happens, but you don't have to do it alone.
Today feels different. I just want to be honest about that right from the very start. I sat down to record this episode and I just sat there and smiled. Because today is season 2, episode 30, and overall that is episode 50 of We Are Women Unapologetically. 50 episodes. I'm still trying to process it, and I intentionally didn't want to do what sometimes people do when they hit a milestone. They just sit there, they mention it briefly, thank everyone, and move on like it didn't really mean anything. Because this really does mean something to me. It means something to me personally and to all the guests that have shared their stories. And I honestly think that it means something to the work that we've been building together. 50 episodes is a lot of conversations. It is a lot of mornings where I have showed up and the message was crystal clear of what I wanted to deliver. And there were also a lot of mornings where I showed up and the message was still finding shape. And quite honestly, there were some mornings that I just couldn't put into words what I wanted to say. I had to stop and pause and come back to it a different day. This 50 episodes represent stories about career transitions, caregiving, grief, leadership, burnout, confidence, reinvention, self-trust, disappointment, and starting over. It's also about learning how to choose yourself in seasons where your life doesn't look the way that you have planned. And that's okay. So what I wanted to do with this episode is something that really truly felt honest to me. Don't worry, it's not going to be a highlight reel or a bunch of throwback clips, but I actually want to talk to you about what 50 episodes has taught me. It's taught me about change, about leadership, about growth, and what it truly means to get honest with yourself. Although I'll be sharing with you what I have learned, I encourage you to look at your own life and see how you can learn from everything that I've learned as well. When I started this podcast, I had a very clear intention. I wanted to talk about all of it. I knew I wanted it to be a place where we could talk about the good, the bad, the hard, the messy, all of the parts that people usually keep quiet because they are too busy trying to hold everything and everyone else together. What I didn't anticipate is how much this podcast would actually become a mirror for me. At first, it started off as quick glances into a mirror, like when you try on an outfit and instantly know it's not quite as comfortable or it's not the right fit or the right color. But as I started to settle into season 1 and all through season 2, I got more comfortable with that mirror. I got comfortable standing in front of it just a little bit longer and truly opening up to see the beauty inside every single story and situation. I thought that I was building something to help other women navigate change, and I was, and I will still continue to be. But what I didn't truly understand is how it was going to make me look at my own life. It's made me look at my own decisions, my leadership, my own relationship with truth. Because when you sit down for 50 episodes and talk about change, pulling back the curtain, you start to notice things. You start to hear what continuously comes up. You start to recognize when someone is saying, I'm fine, but what they really mean is I have been doing this for so long, I don't even know what support would even look like anymore. You start to understand that change is rarely just about the visible thing, the job, the burnout, the reorg, the relationship, the caregiving season. Most of the time, change is asking for a much deeper question underneath all of it. What has changed inside of you? What is no longer acceptable in the way that it used to be? What have you been continuing to hold on to in the same way, even though your life doesn't look the same? Those are the questions. And this episode is built around all of that. Not because I have all of the answers, because I most certainly do not. But I do know that after 50 episodes, these are the threads that I keep pulling at. These are the things that I see in the work that I do with leaders and high achievers, in my own life, and in the conversations that keep landing with the people listening to this show. The first thing I want to talk about is growth. Growth often starts before you can explain it. I think about how many people sit there feeling something sometimes, maybe even for months or years, because they can't quite articulate what that feeling is yet. They think they need a perfect language before they're allowed to acknowledge that something has changed. They think they need a full plan before they can admit the discomfort that they are feeling is real. And they think that they need a clean, reasonable answer that they can justify before they can say it out loud. But the reality is that growth doesn't always show up wrapped in a pretty bow. Sometimes it starts with something quiet. A goal that used to excite you that doesn't give you that same joy anymore. A table that you worked super hard to get to, and that seat doesn't feel as comfortable now that you're there. A role that you used to feel proud starts to feel heavier than it used to. The way that you used to push through things that you were actually proud of, they start costing you more than you expected. And the tricky part is what actually happens next, because most people try to explain that newfound realization way too soon. They try to make sense of all of it before they have even had enough time to actually feel it. They start asking, am I being ungrateful? Am I overthinking this? Why doesn't this feel the same? And they are looking for a very neat answer to come out of something that is actually very messy and very human process. Sometimes the most honest thing that you can say is just, something's changed. That sentence is uncomfortable because it doesn't give you a plan. It doesn't tell you what you need to do by Monday. It doesn't wrap up anything in a bow, but it does tell the truth. And the truth is often the very first step. Because when I look at this podcast, I can see that clearly in the arc of the show. When I started We Are Women Unapologetically, I knew I wanted to talk about women navigating transitions. But the show has evolved. The conversations have gotten deeper. The leadership lens has become much more intentional. The clarity around my work has sharpened significantly. None of that happened because I had every answer at episode 1. But it has happened because I kept showing up, paying attention, and kept letting the work evolve. I want you to think about where you're doing the opposite of that in your own life. Where are you waiting for the perfect explanation before you acknowledge what you already feel? Where has something changed, but you keep talking yourself out of noticing it? Where are you still moving through the same rhythm because admitting that it doesn't fit anymore feels like just too much to deal with right now? I'm here to let you know that you don't need a whole plan to acknowledge the change. The second thing that I have realized, and this is a big one, is that your capacity changes when your life changes. This might be the realization that I've seen cause the most quiet damage in high-achieving people. Because if you have been the strong one, the reliable one, the problem solver, the one people call on when things fall apart, it can feel genuinely strange to admit that your capacity is different than you used to be. It can feel like you're letting people down, like you're changing the rules mid-game. It can feel like absolute failure. But here's what I have learned is that life happens and it changes your capacity. Grief happens, burnout happens, a new level of responsibility, leadership, marriage, divorces, and layoffs all change your capacity. Now, there's one thing that I specifically did not mention in that list, and that is caregiving. I did that because I wanted to do more than just mention it. I wanted to expand upon it. Caregiving changes you in ways that you may have never expected. And in the United States alone, over 53 million people are unpaid caregivers, and the majority of them are women. And most of them, they are doing this while also working. Now, I have mentioned quite a few life-altering events, but the reality is that even growth changes capacity. Because sometimes the more honest you become, the less tolerance you have for the things that you used to quietly allow. So whatever your change is, remember that the further you go, the more complex the load gets. Not just the tasks, but the emotional weight, the decisions, the visibility. They all change you and your capacity. And we need to really start normalizing talking about capacity in a more grown-up way. It's not just about how many tasks you can complete in a day. It's about what your mind, your body, your emotions, and your life can realistically hold without everything that actually matters getting pushed to the side. Because you can be strong and still need support. You can be deeply committed and still need to set clear boundaries. I know this from my own personal life. I've had a lot of seasons where I was carrying a lot. Working full-time while navigating personal responsibilities, caring for people I love, relationships ending, relationships starting. Dealing with the loss of my mother, being in rooms where I had to prove myself when others didn't have to in the same capacity, leading and training and delivering while the rest of life was absolutely not pausing for my calendar. So I want to be clear that this isn't about lowering your standards or giving up on hard things. You've done hard things for most of your life. This is actually about recognizing when the season has changed and your strategy needs to change with it. Just because you handled it before doesn't mean that you're required to handle it now. Some of you have been carrying leadership responsibilities the same way for years. Family expectations, emotional labor, the pressure to always be available, always have the answers, and always make everything easier for everyone else. And maybe the uneasiness that you're feeling or the little voice in the back of your head you're hearing right now, it's not confusion, but rather it is your capacity screaming, something needs to change. The third thing that I have learned is that discomfort is giving you information. We dismiss discomfort way too quickly. We treat it like something to silence, power through, or pray away. And yes, sometimes discomfort is temporary. Sometimes it's fear, sometimes it's a natural stretch that comes with doing something new. But repeated discomfort deserves your attention. Discomfort doesn't automatically mean that you need to burn everything down, especially if orange isn't your most flattering color. It doesn't mean you need to leave a job or end a relationship or make a dramatic announcement by Friday. But what it does mean is that you need to start asking yourself better questions. What is this showing me? What's changed? What am I still doing that no longer makes sense or I don't need to do anymore? What conversation am I avoiding? What have I normalized because I didn't have the time, energy, support, or the language to address it before? Those questions are where discomfort becomes useful. It gives you data and it can give you an action plan if you're willing to sit with the discomfort long enough. I think about the seasons in my life where I just kept going because that's what I knew how to do. I kept working, kept leading, kept delivering, kept caring. And then there were moments where things got quiet enough that you could finally hear yourself. And for me, that stillness, it's actually become a non-negotiable in what I do today because I know what it feels like to move so constantly you can't even actually hear what your own life is trying to tell you. And studies on high achievers and burnout consistently show that people most at risk are the ones who have the hardest time stopping because slowing down actually feels like falling behind or failing. But discomfort has a way of getting loud when you keep ignoring it. It starts as a small irritation, and if it continues to be ignored, it turns into resentment, exhaustion, and then finally detachment. That's when you look at your calendar that is completely full and somehow your life still feels disconnected from what you actually need. Every uncomfortable feeling doesn't require a life overhaul. Every frustrating day doesn't mean you need a new career, but patterns matter. If that same discomfort keeps showing up, pay attention. Because here's the thing is that once you acknowledge the information discomfort is giving you, you become responsible for what you do with it. And I think that's often exactly why people avoid honesty. The truth asks something of you. It may ask you to have the conversation, set the boundaries, stop pretending that everything is fine, stop explaining away the same pattern. Ignoring discomfort doesn't make it go away. It just gets more uncomfortable until you are forced to deal with it one way or another. The fourth thing, and this connects a lot to what season 2 has been about, is that change reveals what your life actually requires right now. Change reveals how you communicate, how you make decisions under pressure. It reveals whether you protect capacity or keep pretending that the math works when you know 2 plus 2 doesn't equal 10. It also reveals whether your habits still match the moment you're actually in. And the last one, and this one really matters, but it also requires a lot. Because the way you led in one season may not be what this season requires. Maybe the old season required speed. This one requires discernment. Old one, prove yourself constantly. This one, own your authority. And that adjustment isn't always comfortable because people around you may still expect that old version. Now, as you know, I spent years in corporate, and one thing that I kept seeing was this, is that people can actually handle hard things, including change they don't like, when the process is clear. Now, they may not agree with every decision and they may not love uncertainty because, quite honestly, I don't know who does. But when they know what matters, who decides, what's happening next, and what capacity actually exists, they can adjust. Gallup data constantly shows that unclear expectations are one of the top drivers of disengagement at work. So it's not just about feeling unsupported emotionally, it is about not knowing what game you're actually supposed to be playing. So when the change hits, whether it's a reorg, a leadership change, a major life transition, whatever it is, the question I want you to sit with is, what needs to be said clearly right now? What decision needs to be made visible? What capacity issue needs to be named before it becomes a problem? And then the question that way too many people skip, what do I need in order to lead well right now? Not just at work, but also at home, in my relationship, in my life as a whole. We talk constantly about what others need, but we barely ever ask what we need of ourselves. And yes, don't get me wrong, because others matter, but you are also a human being inside the change. And the more complex the change, the more important it is to lead with clarity instead of constant self-sacrifice. Because silence may look professional or even happy for a while, but the cost eventually shows up somewhere. It might be in missed timelines, resentment, turnover, arguments, and the person who used to care deeply now feels numb because they've been absorbing way too much for too long without addressing it. Change asks you to update the way that you lead your life. The question is whether you will do it before exhaustion makes the decision for you. And the fifth thing, this is the one that sits at the center of everything that I do here. After 50 episodes, the word unapologetic means something different to me than it did at the beginning of this podcast. It's always been about living life authentically. But being unapologetic to me now is also about being honest with yourself sooner. It's about noticing what has changed and acknowledging the truth. And I think that this is where people misunderstand the word. When I say unapologetic, I'm not talking about walking through life with no consideration for anyone else. I'm talking about living with enough self-respect that you stop abandoning what you know just to keep things comfortable. I'm talking about honoring the fact that you have evolved and that your decision may need to evolve with you. Telling the truth sooner doesn't always feel comfortable because it may disappoint people. It may disrupt a pattern that other people have gotten very comfortable with. Because the more that you trust yourself, the less you need to over-explain your evolution to people who are still trying to see you through the lens of who you used to be. But you have to tell the truth to yourself first. Once you've done that, then you can do it in places where the truth needs to be communicated. Before your body has to force you to rest, before resentment becomes your main form of communication, before you stay too long in something you already know needs to change, and before you keep saying yes while quietly hoping someone notices that you are overwhelmed and about to break down. It doesn't mean you always have to move immediately, but it does mean you stop pretending that you don't know what you know. And that is where real change begins. Now, I want to pause here for a second because this podcast has taught me that my voice gets stronger when I use it. It's taught me that consistency has shown me more than waiting for a perfect condition ever could. It has taught me that women and men are carrying more than they often say out loud because shift happens, but you don't have to do it alone. That tagline right there, it still matters because it is still true. You can be strong and still need support. You can be accomplished and still need a space to think. You can be a leader and still need language for what you're carrying. You can be grateful for what you've built and still admit that something needs to change. And that's okay. Human beings are layered and complex. High achievers especially are often carrying multiple truths at once. Proud and tired, grateful and restless, capable and overloaded, successful and ready for something different. Strong and still deserving of care. And the more that I've done this work, the more that I believe that we need to make room for all of those layers of truth. I'm here to tell you, you've changed, I've changed, we've all changed. And eventually the decisions that you make need to catch up. So as we close out this 50th episode, I want to leave you with some honest questions. Because honest reflection is genuinely powerful. And sometimes one honest question can open a door you've been standing in front of for a very long time, but you've been too afraid to walk through it. What has changed in your life that you haven't fully acknowledged yet? Where has your capacity changed? And where are you still acting like it hasn't? What old expectations are you still trying to meet, even though you are not the same person who made the original commitment? What discomfort keeps asking for your attention? What needs to be named before it becomes resentment? What truth have you been avoiding but not saying clearly? And what decision have you been delaying because you are still trying to make the old version of the story work? Sit with those questions, not to punish yourself, but to acknowledge that you deserve the kind of clarity that only comes when you are actually willing to get honest. 50 episodes in, I am more convinced than ever that change is not always a problem. Sometimes a problem is that we keep trying to respond to change with old language, capacity, expectations, and old definitions of what life is supposed to look like. The next chapter requires you to tell the truth from where you are now, not from where you were then. Not who people expect you to be, not the version of you that could carry everything without questioning it, where you are now. That is the work. And if you've been listening for a while, thank you genuinely from the bottom of my heart. If this is your first episode, I love the fact that you walked in on a milestone, so welcome. If you've ever shared this show with someone, sent an episode to a friend, listened while navigating your own transition, or hit play because something in a title made you feel seen, thank you. This show has been built one episode at a time, one conversation at a time, and I don't take any of it lightly. When you create something like this, you're not just putting content into the world, you are building trust. I want the next chapter of this show to keep honoring it, to keep getting more honest, more useful, more grounded, and more human. So if this episode made you think of someone who's navigating something quietly, send it to them. Let it be the reminder that they are allowed to acknowledge what has changed and get honest about what they need right now. But also be sure to subscribe so you never miss an episode. And if you are in a season where things have changed and you need support making sense of what comes next, this is the work that I do. I partner with people to get clear, make aligned decisions, and move forward without carrying everything the old way. So message me, book a call, and let's get clear together. And until next time, stay fierce, stay bold, but most importantly, stay unapologetically you.